It is 12:30, so welcome. My name is Chuck Fisher. I'm the Executive Director of Dovetail Learning. I am so excited to share with you what we have learned. We're going to be exploring this idea of how self-awareness is critical to resilience, and particularly what gets in the way of our resilience. We have a whole model which I'll be sharing with you as an overview, and then digging into what gets in the way. And this webinar is going to give you a brief but substantive lift on self-awareness about what gets in the way. And I'm going to start by just letting you know a little bit about me and about Dovetail. I have been a therapist, counselor, and psychologist most of my career, working with children and families in and through schools. I've been developing and implementing social emotional learning for children for a lot of that time. And what Dovetail is now doing is social emotional learning for adults. So that's what we're going to be exploring. Dovetail is a nonprofit built and here to strengthen adults and resilience in adults and children, because we care about the world and we want to make it a better place. So one of the ways we're doing that is we're putting all of our work out as an open education resource. This is licensed under Creative Commons, which means that you can go on our website and download almost all of our material for free. You can adapt it, use it. All that the Creative Commons license does is asks you to give attribution to Dovetail for the work, collaborate, share back, and if you publish the work, to share it alike, which means you have to use the same license and make it free and available for everyone else. So very excited about this and what it brings. Just a little bit more about me so you have a flavor. I'm in this work because I love our world. I grew up all over the world and was called what's called a third culture kid. So it was from other cultures that I first saw life and the world. I grew up in the Philippines and in Peru and many other places because I moved every 2 years. My dad was in the government. And I also love these beautiful beings, my grandkids, and I want to make the world a better place for them. And lastly, this is a photo of me when I was 3. And I was in the Philippines. You can see there's a black thing on my head. That's a monkey on my head. And it's both a real monkey, but also figuratively. It's the me that grew up with many adverse childhood experiences and has had a lifetime of exploring what wellness really means. So what we're going to do is look at this approach. As I said, this is social emotional learning for adults. In our early work with children, we discovered that the children that receive the most social emotional gain in a classroom is from an adult who has their own developed social and emotional skills, what we might call emotional intelligence, human maturity, and that's what this is all about. So this idea of we are resilient is because we believe in resilience, and we love this quote from Ann Maston, University of Minnesota, that resilience is an ordinary superpower. It lives in all of us, and as she says, it's the everyday magic of being human. So everything we're going to explore today and everything that our model describes is in all of us. It's part of how we are and who we are. So this approach to resilience that we call We Are Resilient has several parts. It has 2 patterns. What we're going to illuminate today, the cultural patterns and the protective patterns, what we like to call our cultural resilience, what helps us be resilient from our culture. and from our reactive patterns. And then we also illuminate and distinguish 3 sets of skills to center ourselves when we're off balance. How do we bring ourselves back to center? That's called personal resilience. Connecting skills for relational resilience. And a 3rd set of distinctions for collaborating, which are specific skills that allow a group to work well together. And we're not going to get into any of the skills today because this webinar is about what gets in the way. So we'll do these first 2. Just a little bit more on that. The cultural patterns are what we've gained, what we've inherited intergenerationally, and it defines how we view the world. Our reactive resilience is just that. It's how we react to the world. And our skills, the skillful means that we have, that we all have all these skills, but practicing them and distinguishing them and becoming stronger in them is how we create our world. So that's all to say we have these 5 types of resilience. They all interact with each other. Each set of resilience impacts the others, and we love exploring it, sharing it, and continuing to learn about it. So resilience matters because how we are matters. It's a little diagram here, what we call practice model coach. When we practice our skills and we practice our noticing and we practice being more aware of what takes us off our resilience, then we can model better how to be in resilience. And that's the modeling that others learn from. And through deep practice and modeling, then we can become a coach and help people learn from our inner music, because our inner music, the way we're showing up, how we show up, impacts everything, including us and everyone we're with. So we'd love to walk our talk, and I'd like to just ring a bell here and ask us to just notice, how are we right now? What's our state of being? I'm going to ring the bell, say a few words. We'll take about 20 seconds and invite you just to rest, put your feet on the floor, close your eyes if you're open to that, and just be present to yourself. You may find that attending to your breath brings you closer in, just noticing, how am I today, right now, in this moment? It's a practice we do at the beginning of almost every meeting, and we bring to our work in healthcare, in education and business, with families. This approach is something that we're using across all those domains. And what I'd like to do is just ask you to open up the chat and chat in a word or a phrase of how you are doing right now. What came up for you? And I'll be able to see that and I'll put it out. Oh, thank you so much. That's great. Yes, curious. Curious is so great. Anxious is such a part of the human experience. Tired but hopeful. Better now. Even that 20 seconds helps us get better, doesn't it? That mindful moment. Relaxed, anxious, and excited for this, learning and growing. Everyone's welcome to put in the chat. I'm going to keep on going. Just love that you're participating. Thank you so much. What we're going to now apply to this idea is what Kathleen said, which was being curious. So we're going to bring in our resilient mindsets, which is part of how we gain resilience. And that includes curiosity, choice, and courage. And in this framework, we're going to say, curious about how I'm being. How am I being? What throws me out of my resilience? What takes me off of resilience? choices, what are the choices I can make to be more resilient? And courage is to really lean into what kind of person do I want to be? And to be courageous about that, to um, work with myself, to love myself up and be the best self that I can be. So let's bring our curiosity to this idea of what can get in the way, what we like to call the human condition. And as I said, we're going to do a spotlight on the two patterns that we illuminate, the cultural patterns and the protective patterns. And we're going to start with the cultural patterns. So oh, I didn't do my housekeeping. Just wanted to remind you that you can put your screen in side-by-side mode in the top right corner if you're not familiar with Zoom, so you can either see more of me or more of the slide share. We'll use our chat, and if you have any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'll try and get to them towards the end. This is meant to be a 30-minute webinar. I will be sending out the video recording of this when it's all done. So if I go a little over, if you have to leave a little early, you'll be able to get it all. So back to cultural patterns, how we view the world. Well, cultural patterns are just something that we all have. We've all inherited. They're intergenerationally passed along from our family stories, community norms, the construct of race that we grew up with, our gender identification, religious tradition, ethnicity, political affiliation, our sexual orientation. All of these things inform us about ourselves, our identity, and they inform key ingredients to our resilience. So let's look at that. Key ingredients to our resilience. Let's look at how the cultural patterns help us. Cultural patterns give us our core values from our family and our ethnicity and our life worldview. They're shortcuts to understand and navigate the world. They help us gain belonging to a group of people with whom we feel safe and are affiliated with. And they give us our opportunities for celebration and for strength and for love and belonging. However, cultural patterns can also harm us. Cultural patterns that get passed down, a certain worldview that holds only one worldview, can blind us to others' truth. Our cultural patterns can give us judgments that short-circuit relatedness. If I have a judgment about a certain type of person, or sort of classic is, I see someone pull up on a Harley, and they have a bald head and a vest on and something tattooed on their arm, and I think, whoa, do I need to be careful here? It's a judgment that short circuits what I know to be a group of people who are deeply committed and elegantly loving life, and I had to learn that the hard way. So cultural patterns. Cultural patterns also perpetuate lack of access to health and wealth. We know all about that discrimination. And they alter health immune factors. Now, we're not going to go into the science of this. We do trainings for healthcare clinics, and we go into that science, but today we're not going to do that. So helping and harming. This comes down to how these inherited attitudes, beliefs, and possibilities impact our resilience. And they can harm us because they can be the holder of fear, despair, and doubt. They can be the basis of bias, discrimination, and racism, which often all comes from trauma. And they can also help us. Cultural patterns are what gives us our awareness of love and hope and trust, and can develop our love and caring about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So cultural patterns, the distinction between love and fear are important. And if we pay attention to them, we can know more about resilience, both for ourselves and others. So they also do something else. When we really see how cultural patterns work, and this is going to be true of protective patterns also, we get to understand that every single human being has absolutely impeccable reasons for being exactly who they are. I discovered this myself when I was teaching teenagers for many years in peer helping and teaching them about how to be with other people. And they just had so much judgment about themselves, each other, other people. And it turns out that if you really have the lens of cultural patterns and understand why people are the way they are, that everyone has reasons for being the way they are, including us, including our family members, including the people across the divide, and the people we might call horrible people. And when we understand that deeply, it opens our empathy and it opens our compassion. And empathy and compassion are part of resilience. When we're in those spaces, we're accessing our resilience. So we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about our protective patterns, and that's the next 10 minutes. And being curious about how we react to the world. Now we call them protective patterns because they're reactive patterns that were born in us to protect us. And we often have a lot of judgments about our reactive patterns. But it turns out that they are here to help us. And they can harm us, and we're going to look at that too. So let's go into the protective patterns. I'm going to start by locating the protective patterns on what we call the stress curve. You can notice here, before a stress event occurs, we are going along our life, our day, everything's cool. A stress event occurs. That stress event might be a mental idea in my head, like, oh my God, something's going to be difficult later. And I start having a reaction to it, or something actually occurs and I have a reaction to it. And that pops in my protective patterns. I'm going to start using one of my protective patterns. I might lose my cool, I might not, but that reactive stress curve tends to peak and then calms and there's depletion. And our protective patterns are what we're now going to explore. So the protective patterns are, and this is a distillation of about 30 kinds of patterns that my team and I discovered and defined and then distilled down to these 6. We all distrust, we're hypervigilant, we can be hyper caretaking, we definitely avoid, and we defend ourselves at the drop of a hat, and we sometimes attack. Now, it doesn't feel very good to do any of these things, and this is where the judgment comes in. But I want you to remember that these are here to protect us. So let's use our curiosity mindset, and think about how these protective patterns work and which protective patterns do you use? So, jumping in, distrusting. Distrusting. Do I doubt myself or others? You're darn right I do. I learned to doubt early. I've doubted myself. Oh, can I do something? Or should I do it? Should I not do it? Doubting others. Are they going to play fairly with me or not? That lives in the adult world as much as the child world. Being wary, negative self-talk, being overly critical. Distrusting, though, helps us. It protects us. It protects us from being harmed. It helps us to be super careful, but it also gets in the way of our life, our relationship with ourselves and others. So let's look at that just a little more closely. How does distrusting help? Okay, we've talked about protecting. It ensures that we won't make mistakes if we're really distrusting. We're careful about that. How can it harm us? Well, it can result in inaction. I can get stuck when I distrust. If I distrust myself, I'm not going to go do something. And it can be difficult to be in healthy relationships if I'm in that distrusting place. So you can see here it's both, the both and spectrum of life. It's not one or the other, it's both. And when we see that, then we can welcome our distrusting in and realize, oh, I'm feeling really distrusting today. What do I need to do with that? Do I stay with it and avoid something? Or do I step through it? and connect. The next one is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is I'm on constant alert. Now, I grew up in an alcoholic family, and I can tell you I learned how to be hypervigilant early on. I need to always track where my dad was, what mood he was in. Hypervigilance, just came naturally to me, and so it's naturally a part of my life now. I walk into a room, and I'm careful about who's there, who's not. Is that certain person I don't want to be there? We all do this. We watch out for what's going on. So, being on guard, it's worry and anxiety. And let's look. How can it help? How can hypervigilance help us? How does it help you? Being hypervigilant. Well, it identifies something early. It gives time to create appropriate actions. Um, so there's a gift in our hypervigilance, and it also gets in the way. It gets in the way of our resilience. So how does it harm? Well, it holds that sense of fear and anxiety where it just may not be warranted. So if I'm wired to be hypervigilant, I'm always on the lookout. Limits connection, and it prevents appropriate risk taking, like going up to a set of people in a in a group and introducing myself and saying hi and starting into the conversation even though I don't know them. Okay, hyper caretaking is let's see, this is the third one. That's right. Hyper caretaking. Do I over prioritize others at my own detriment? We all caretake. We all love to caretake. We love to be caring. We love to do things for others. But do I over prioritize? And does it cause me to feel like a victim? Because all of that impacts my resilience immensely. But first, let's look at how it helps. How does it help? Um, well, I can help other people in need. I hyper caretake. I can really be there for them. It creates a connection. It strengthens community. It gives me a sense of feeling being needed. That feels good. We all love to contribute. Contribution is so critical and important to resilience and to fulfillment and happiness. So, hyper caretaking, how does it get in the way? Well, when we neglect our own fundamental needs and we put ourselves in the victim position, like, oh, I've done all this for them, and oh, well, I don't ever get my needs met, or I don't take a vacation, or I, don't stop and take a rest, or I'm not taking a run today. All these things, I'm doing things for others, but not taking care of myself. And that self-care, it turns out, is one of the most important things we can do. Um, and it doesn't honor other people's self-reliance, their capacity, their true capacity to take care of themselves. Okay, three more. I'm on the rush here to get this done in 30 minutes, so I might go just a little more. Um, Avoiding. Do I withdraw or retreat? And as I said right at the beginning, of course I do. Something's coming up, I might avoid it. I walk into the building and I go a different way than a way that in which I'm going to run into someone who I might have a conflict with. Do I withdraw? Do I retreat? Is it a way of being for me? And it's about numbing our emotions too. Addictive behavior is all in this dimension of avoiding. Substances, shopping, overeating, overworking, screen time. It's avoiding can get us in trouble. So let's look at how it helps. Avoiding, yes, I love avoiding. It can de-escalate a situation. If I avoid something for a little while, the situation can de-escalate. It gives me time to compose myself before I have the difficult conversation. Creates a space in which to protect myself, maybe physical, emotional. But avoiding, of course, as we talked, also gets in the way. And it can harm us by shutting down our access to our emotions, that deep central channel of physical intelligence, what we call emotional intelligence, the intelligence of our emotions to guide us, can shut that down when we avoid it. It can prevent finding lasting solutions. cause loneliness, and reduce connection. So last two are defending and attacking. Let's look at those. In our office, everybody defines what their primary areas are, and I used to think that mine was avoiding and defending. It was like I knew those were my prime because I was clearly cut out to avoid and defend. Um, since then, I've learned that every single one of these has a place in my life. Every single one of them. And defending came on strong for me, again, in my early childhood. I had a lot of adverse childhood experiences, um, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, alcoholic family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into it. But I learned that I was worried about other people judging me. Do you worry about other people judging you? Do you feel like you're not enough? Like maybe something's not quite right? It's so normal for us to feel that way. And we get defensive when we feel that way. Someone says something that we already know, and we might get defensive. Someone, tries to push you in a certain way, and you get defensive. It's just normal human behavior. We dig in our heels, and we try to prove that we're right, even at the cost of the relationship. So um, I can see I am going to go over just a little bit here. Apologize for that, but if you have time, you can stay with me. If not, you can get the recording. Defending helps us because we can stand up for ourselves. We ensure others hear our point of view, but it can harm us by interrupting others, shutting down our ability to listen. It can escalate a situation. It can create distance. It can appear as if we need to always be right, and it's a lost opportunity for learning. And then lastly, attacking is, am I quick to be on the offensive? And sometimes, for me, when I get defensive, I become very offensive. I can be very attacking when I get defensive, especially with the people closest to me that I love the most. I mean, isn't it just how life works that we do that? Am I quick to be on the offensive? Responding with a personal attack. So, some people would say there's no place for offensiveness, but let's just look at how it might protect us from aggression, can help us stand against harm, create a feeling of power. But of course, hostility invites counterattacks, hurts relationships, stops possible engagement. And so the inquiry now is, what's your style? What's your style? Are you more like a turtle and go in the shell? Or are you more like a lion on the attacking end of things? And I ask you again just to pop into the chat window. Which protective pattern feels like a strength for you? Go ahead and pop those in, if you will. It's just so interesting. Great, thank you. Hyper caretaking, me too. Hypervigilance, me too. And we've got some avoiders coming in here. Yes, all of them. Really depends on context. Thank you so much for that. That's really good. Yeah, our resilience goes up and down, and so do our protective patterns and our reactive patterns. Vigilance, hyper caretaking, another hyper caretaking. We got a lot of hyper caretakers in the room. Well, this is what this is all about. So what I want to invite you to do is use compassionate self-inquiry and just be aware of what you're noticing in yourself as you go from today on forward. Please go to our website and download our guides on the protective patterns and all of the other material. As Angelos Arian says, our work is about transforming our inner critic into a fair witness so we can be gentle and kind and self-compassionate and bring that to all of the work we have in the world. I want to remind you that we also teach skills for resilience, the centering skills, the connecting skills, and the collaborating skills. This particular naming convention came out of my practice of Aikido. I'm a black belt in Aikido. It's a peaceful martial art. And in martial arts, you have to center yourself first and then connect with another person before you can engage and relate together and collaborate. And it's how our world works. So Dovetail Learning has tons of resources. As I said, we're an open educational resource. All of our work can be downloaded for free. We have books which can be downloaded or also purchased. We have practical skills for resilience for healthcare, for educators, for families, and we're in the process of writing one for business. We have video learning, digital downloads. I guess I also already said that. And please visit our website. I want to thank you all for being here. You can reach me at chuck@dovetaillearning.org. Again, I'm Chuck Fisher, Executive Director at Dovetail. So happy to share this work with you. If you have, I didn't open up the Q&A, the handout. Can we provide a handout? Karen, the handout I can send. Yes, I will send with the video. I will send a handout on this with the video. Getting lots of thanks. You're so welcome. And I wish you all the best in your journey of resilience. And please reach out to us. Let us know how you're using the work. Always curious. There are 50 people signed up for this webinar, and I have no idea who you are, where you're from. So let us know. Thanks again.